Some people spend their whole lives trying to figure out why they were born. I know why I was born, and I'm going to share that with you in a minute. But first, I want to tell you about someone who knows almost nothing about his birth. His name is Joe Saul. He's 75 years old, a short, wiry man who has kind of like a giant heart and a really bad back that keeps him from traveling, or he'd be here tonight. He lives alone in a house on a lake in Rockland County, New York, and where he works from home. He still works full-time. And he grew up in Rockland County after he was adopted as an infant in 1939. His parents told him that his biological parents had been killed in an auto accident. And for some reason, he was phobic about the whole idea of adoption. He refused to tell anybody he was adopted. He refused to think about it, to talk about it. He would not even say the A word. Until when he was in his early 40s, in the early 1980s, there was a day when he called his therapist. And he said, he probably didn't use exactly these words, but he said something like, "If you think I was fucked up before, wait till you hear what I learned today." And what he had learned was that the story of the auto accident was a lie. His father had bought him from a black market baby merchant. And he paid $5,000. Now in 1939, in current dollars, that's worth about $85,000. But it was also the end of the recession. People just didn't pay money like that. And for that $5,000, his father, who by the way was a lawyer, his father got not only a baby, but he got obscurity, silence. Because the woman who had a business of selling babies was very good at covering up her own tracks and covering up the records of the babies that she sold. So it became Joe's mission in life to find his mother. He wanted nothing more than to find his mother. He joined adoption support groups. He went back to school, got an MSW, and became a therapist specializing in adoption issues, and that's what he still does from his home in Rockland County. He wrote books. He organized conferences. 3 times he walked from New York to Washington in support of open adoption laws. He helped hundreds, probably thousands of people find their parents or their children, but after 30 years, he gave up on finding his mother. He struck out. He couldn't try any longer because he'd been disappointed so many times. Now, I, having been born into an older family, having been a late child, I know a lot about my birth. If my parents didn't want to tell me, I had a much older brother and sister who would be glad to tell me anything they didn't want to tell me. And, you know, in August of 1945, they were living, that is my parents and my brother and sister, were living in a row house in Philadelphia with other extended family members, and they got this call from New York. My father's niece, Ruthie, had given birth to a baby boy, and this was a big event for them because they were very close with Ruthie. So they left their kids with relatives, and they really wanted to get to New York to see the new baby and congratulate Ruthie and her husband Sid. They hopped in the car and they drove to New York, and here comes the reason I was born. They forgot their condoms. So in a way, I owe my life to Ruthie giving birth that day and to the boy that she bore that day. Now the other thing that happens when, or is likely to happen when you're a late child like that, is your relatives die off before you do. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I found myself the last pine standing, the last member of my immediate family of origin. And one of the last of my generation on the extended family tree. And you know, the people that I used to go to ask questions about the past, you know, were gone. Now the younger generation would be coming to me. What was I going to do? How would I know everything? And I realized I could go on Ancestry.com and build a family tree, so it'd be there forever for my children, my nieces, my nephews. And, you know, I'd learn new details. I'd be sure I was right about what year this happened and all that kind of stuff. So I'd go onto Ancestry.com, start building a family tree, and learn a lot more than I ever thought I would. And I even found some relatives that I'd never met. So a cousin in a branch of the family tree that I'd sort of forgotten about got in touch with me, and we worked together, building our family trees and helping each other do research. And eventually we each sent our DNA away for analysis by Ancestry.com. The results came back, and you know, when you get those results from Ancestry.com, you get a lot of fourth cousins, fifth cousins, sixth cousins with a 70% probability, and you might as well not be related. You look at the family trees, you can't even find where the link is. But she and I, my cousin and I, came back accurately as first or second cousins with a 99% probability. Great. So we knew that the Ancestry.com system was accurate. The only problem was there was another person who showed up for each of us with the exact same designation, first or second cousin with a 99% probability. His name was Joe Saul. True. And with information we got from Joe, my cousin and I put our heads together and we figured out that the most likely candidate to have been Joe's mother was my cousin Ruthie, my father's niece, who gave birth that day and was responsible for me being alive. If we were right, it means that Ruthie had a baby in 1939 when she was in her early 20s, before she was married. And then in the early 40s, met Sid, got married, and they had their baby in August of 1945. I was born approximately 9 months later. Joe kind of resisted this at first. He had been misled so many times that he was afraid to believe. And a year ago, January 2014, I went up to Rockland County to meet him in person for the first time, and I spent a weekend with him. And by dumb luck, I was there when he got genetic proof that Ruthie was indeed his mother. He was ecstatic. He was thrilled. And more than that, I realized that I was the last person alive who could tell him the most about what a wonderful person his mother had been. And Joe and I felt instantly like brothers, right? Not like cousins. We still check in with each other daily by email. And as I thought about it, you know, the reason I was the best person to talk to him was that the boy who was born that day had severe mental disabilities, basically was unmanageable and unteachable, and has spent the last 55 years of his life in institutions. He still lives today in a New York State mental hospital. And I always felt like I was a surrogate for Ruthie. She loved being with me, watching me grow, and I took that to mean that I was making up for her loss, for filling a void for her, replacing what she wasn't seeing in her disabled son. Now, maybe I understand too that I was standing in also for Joe, whom she had given up. So now, with Joe and I, like brothers, I can say two things about that, or I've realized two things about it. One is, maybe I'm not really, even though his name is Saul, maybe I'm not really still the last pine standing. I have a brother. And maybe that missing condom was not the only reason I was born.